Okay. I guess you're off the hook. That's it. You want to ask me any questions before we begin? Okay. Now, what do you want to talk about tonight? You want to talk about something special? The uses of communism.
Well, or
Most of us are
I was taught by Marxism or Lenin what he
yeah.
um,
Well, what he talked about was related to conditions at that time. And he had some very interesting social theories amongst the world's what you call foremost thinkers, according to our society. Karl Marx is one of the finest minds that was ever produced in terms of what they call original thinking. But we don't teach that so much in our schools because our schools try to get you to become part of this system, and communism tries to get you to be part of that system, and fascism is part of the other system. And we here, all of us here tonight, are not able to hear what I'm going to say. I'm going to say a lot of things tonight, and some brains are going to do interesting things with it. The human brain is an interesting process altogether. It's like a story we tell on Miami Beach, that an old Jewish man was walking down a dark street with three Irishmen, and he beat them up and he took their money away from them and killed the three Irishmen. By the time 20 Jews tell that story to one another, it winds up with three Irishmen killed a Jew. It doesn't work. See, you see what I'm getting at? Like you tell somebody a story and they listen to it and they change it around. Or if the Japanese won the war, I don't know if you can picture this, they would show movies of American chain gangs, how we used to put men in chains in the South. And you say, oh, that didn't occur in our country. They grab you, they bring you down, they'd show you the guys that ran the chain gangs. Then they'd show you sweat boxes in American prisons. Then they'd show you youth halls and whorehouses all the way down the cheap and poor impoverished cities of America. Then you'd see war atrocities like My Lai by the hundreds that you never heard about. Then you'd see American soldiers clean-cut kicking out Japanese teeth. Did you know they did that during the war? Do you know they cut the ears off the Japanese and made necklaces of them? You didn't know that? Okay. What I'm trying to tell you is that all nations are rotten to the core. This is the most rotten of all nations that ever existed. Maybe I didn't make that clear. I repeat myself. I hope you get that to the FBI and the CIA, which is the most corrupt of all organizations. Now, those of you that have been coming for years might remember the descriptions of the FBI and the CIA. Now it's almost common knowledge. There's no good government. They're all rotten. Every mayor, every government man, every police officer, and every judge, and every lawyer. I hope there's a lawyer here tonight. Anyway, they are worthless. And the engineers that kiss ass in this system and turn out the shitty, shoddy products that are designed to wear out. I don't know if you knew that, did you? You didn't know that products are designed to wear out? There's only a few products that are designed not to wear out, and that's mostly guns. Guns are very well built. Have you ever noticed that? The guy pick up a rifle and says, see, this thing is 103 years old, and you fire it and it still works. When you take something interesting, it doesn't work too much. It breaks down. So there are things the Army doesn't want guns to break down. So they say, God damn it, make them thick and tough and strong. War tanks are well built. But things like your telephone is well built. That's the only thing you don't own. Well, that's designed not to break down. But if they design things to break down, they sell millions of these bulbs every year. There are letters that used to be published years ago in magazines that you don't see anymore. Letters sent to GE and Westinghouse for the engineers to see if they can design an element in a lamp that will go about 9 months and then burn out. That's good engineering. They design brake drums, things like that. They give you a guaranteed period, which they run at their lab and make sure to wear out just a little after that guarantee. You know what I'm talking about? You say, why they do those terrible things? Because they can resell things. If they can put a permanent lipstick on you that stays on forever, with your favorite, Tangy, whatever it is, probably you wouldn't want it right away because you'd feel strange about it. Or if they can set your eyebrows once so they're clean and your lashes perfectly long, you know, stick out and tickle Carl over there. They used to, some of you don't know this, years ago they started to tattoo lips red. Did you know that? About 35, 40 years ago. And they weren't too bad, but you couldn't tell the difference. Then they'd have the eyebrows removed years ago, electrolysis, and they would tattoo the eyebrow in there. You see very few people with it today. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but if you have a permanent system, if you had a permanent hair wash, you use it once and your hair stays clean forever, the company go out of business. So this system that you live under is designed to do this to you continuously. Finger job. In other words, you get fingered by the system. All right, now if you still don't understand me, the system that you live in, say many years ago in America, don't say many years ago, say 150 years ago, you'd have to read some history books. You just go out and stake off your land, 20 acres, 100 acres, and maybe if you had an old man, you and your old man could put up a log cabin in 6 months. Maybe. If he's slow, 6 months and finish it. And it's paid for. But today, you pay for 30 years. Buy a house, and for 30 years. And if your house costs you $20,000, it's about $40,000 by the time you pay it off. Did you know that? It's almost double. You know who gets that extra money? The banks. For 3 weeks of paperwork. Just line it up. And nobody says, my God, it's thievery. It was Abraham Lincoln that said if the American people knew how the banks worked, they'd tear them to pieces. And it's Fresco that said if they knew how anything worked, they'd tear it to pieces. They don't know how anything works. Now, a lot of you feel that doctors have been charging a lot of money to people for various kinds of ills because their insurance rates are so high and there's legal problems and lawsuits and all this sort of thing. It's very hard for them to get by unless they charge you a great deal of money. So the doctors almost felt that they were going to go out on mass strike, you see, and not participate unless these insurance funds can be diminished or cut down considerably. But like I said in other sessions, if you come to a doctor with gigantic cancer, how much is it going to cost? You say, well, it could run $10,000 or $40,000. You can't walk out with your cancer saying, well, no, I can't pay that. Then you've got to go. The poor idiots called the masses of people have no complaint. Your mother and dad can save up maybe $40,000, $50,000 in their lifetime, maybe. And if your old man gets sick, they can go in 3 years, easily. Did you know that? So what's the sense of it? What are the doctors complaining about? What? I mean, here's the public. They can't go out on strike when they're sick. If you're dying, one of your lungs is disappearing rapidly and the other's got a short time to go, you could wind up in a hospital at $200 a day or more. All kinds of debt. So nobody has security in this stinking system. Let me repeat myself. There's nothing good at all in this. Isn't that awful? Nothing. The marriages are no good. Human relations are rotten. There's not a happy marriage anywhere. There are many people that'll hold hands and say, we're happy, but they're full of shit. And really track them down. The reason that you can't be happy is this, essentially. That different people, we use the word individual. And if you're really an individual, let's assume you guys are married. If you're really individual, he says, let's go to the beach tonight. I go, oh, not tomorrow. See, he said, well, let's go and see this show. And he says, well, I'm not today. And you go, or you buy a boat. Say, gee, come on, honey, let's go boating. And I get some things I want to do, and my girlfriend doesn't want to do it. And so I said, geez, if only she'd go boating with me, we'd get along all right. That's all I ask. See? Finally, she says, well, all right. And as the motor conks out, she says, I had to go boating with you. And now there's more trouble. And pretty soon, I said, geez, the big game's coming to town. She says, you and your lousy football, whatever it is. So I don't know how two people can get along, because if there is such a thing as individuality, if there really is, unless there's subservience. If I say, how do you like this lamp on me? You say, well, it's wonderful. I said, I painted your room black. You go, oh, how wonderful. So no real differences, then you can get along. That's why slavery came into existence. Men read a book on the art of reason and put it to work, and it didn't work. So they conquered a lot of people. Just, you, start digging out there. You, if she doesn't dig, start digging. Get her to dig. That's how they built the pyramids. They didn't levitate any shit into position. They used slaves, and they lugged things around. And the slave system is the only thing that works. Oh, along came a guy, Abraham Lincoln, another full of shit, corrupt son of a bitch. The North couldn't compete with the South. They had to pay their help. In the South, they didn't pay them, so they can turn out goods cheaper. And the North would like the slaves freed so they can compete. That isn't in your history books. See? So the pictures you get are all bullshit. All your history books are strictly bullshit. That's why I said if the Japanese won the war, or the Nazis won the war, you'd have a different story. I don't say they're right. They're all full of shit, is what I'm trying to tell you. All right. If you've known people that have gotten divorces, is there anybody here that ever got a divorce? No. Okay. Interesting thing about it is you once loved the guy, and you mention his name. I don't want to hear that shit anymore. See? Like, what happened to the love and all that? Well, I was dumb. I didn't know the difference. I was infatuated. The real truth is that you were never in love. Really, nobody's ever in love. What happens to people is they find some people that they identify with in some area. And it's such a vast, lousy desert of non-identification that any little bit of identification causes us to melt away. You know, like crying in your lap. Honey, you're the only one that understands me. Until another girl comes along that understands. And then when you say, oh, Jacque, that was a terrible thing you did, then they come over and say, you know what my wife said to me? She said I did it. She said that? I said, oh, you understand me. She doesn't. Then I cry in your lap. You say, damn thing. Finally, we live together, and pretty soon you say, you're always doing this, and you never do anything I want to do. And you cry at his lap. So the whole idea is real, ultra happiness and love doesn't exist. But in books it exists. That's the package. The old days, the movies used to end with couples walking into the sunset, hand in hand, and the birds flying in the sun. And, goodbye, John. Now, as you know, all of this bullshit, this fairy tale land, America is one gigantic Disney World. See? Now, it is. It's a big, fat Disney World, where, and in the Shirley Temple, the good ship Lollipop. You know what I mean? On the good ship Lollipop. And everybody has a good ship Lollipop. And this is the shit. The shit is, if I like Carl, I don't go out and buy him a ring. Yeah, Carl. Oh, what's it? You shouldn't have. I said, all right. I take it down and put it in my pocket. Suppose I listen to things people say. You know, oh, you should have done that. I jack up their car already, take the tile. You should have. So I take it down and I go away. I said, well, now, just a minute. If from the ship they have manners, people, and manners are bullshit. The only truth is realism, being real. And being real means if you permit poverty to exist on the other side of the tracks, your sister can be raped, stabbed, and robbed, if it exists. If poverty doesn't exist, meaning poverty of warmth, love, material goods, as long as poverty exists, you're all threatened. If I'm a good engineer and I'm working for a company and she's a better engineer, my job is threatened. So we are all threatened because they pit one person against the other. If you work for a drug house, they try to push that thing. If you think you're not a whore here, there's not a prostitute in the building, there are prostitutes all over the place. Some women sell their pussy, others sell their voice, chew Wrigley's gum, or whatever the hell they sing about. They don't like to sing that shit. There are many good actors today that have no worth. And they get up and say, have you tried Blow Joe's bread recently? It's terrific, you know? And another actor says, if you don't use this toothpaste, you're not going to have any teeth. And they get on and they go out. And they say, this is the only kind of toothpaste. Or shaman, you know, squeeze the shit. What shit? They're fully grown human beings used on television. You think that the guys made these vacuum tubes in their labs night and day to study conductivity and metals, and they finally come up with a machine made of great intelligence, cumulative man's intelligence, to show tap dancer Larry, or singing Louise, or Elvis Presley, or Helen Trent's troubles? What a filthy, stinking society you live in. If any of these guys can come back from the grave and see what they've done to their television, or their dynamite, which they used to loosen minerals in the early days, and the Chinese use it for amusement, and other people use it to kill with. And I said that your system is utterly corrupt all the way to the funeral parlors, the burial systems. A lot of people don't know this, and they don't put it in the papers too frequently, but I'm going to tell it to you once again, because people forget. They find embalming fluid in a lot of the reservoirs, and they find it in a lot of the underground, the water table under the ground. So if you live near a cemetery and you got a well that tastes a little odd, that's what you're getting. Did you know? How many of you knew about that? Embalming fluid. That's right. So every dead idiot, they pump this shit into them so the worms won't eat them. If the worms won't eat them, it's pretty poisonous shit, formaldehyde. In other words, if you pump anything into anything and it goes back into the earth, even the plants choke to death. So in the early days, when a guy like me died, he just fell to the ground, and the worms ate me, and they went back in the ground. The trees got greener, the apples got bigger, and the soil became enriched. We took from the soil and we went back to it. Today we don't even go back to it. They seal you up, pump your ass full of shit, cork it up, put your seal in a box, lower you under the ground, and then they say, oh, your loved one's subject to seepage. That means there's a rainwater get into your mother's tomb. So they sell you a super sealed casket, so no rainwater gets in. And I mentioned before, they bury sailors at sea. There's no rain problems there. There's a lot of seepage. Nobody, they dump them right off the ship. They're continuous seepage. And the whole idea of our society, there's nothing makes sense. Nobody can open a book and say, now pronounce your man and wife. Who is this shithead? If you like somebody, move in with them. If you don't get along, move out. Don't go to a lawyer. If I don't get along with him, you give me $125 and you move out. Who the hell is he? You didn't marry him. But everybody thinks that that's normal. They all think that that's a normal thing to do. They are so fucking sick. That's why there's so many psychiatrists and psychologists. They are sick too, because they're part of this thinking culture. They're playing the same game. Now, if you understand what I'm talking about, you don't have to pay anybody off when you get married. You want to buy a house, you got to go down and get a lawyer to close the deal or finish a closing course. I don't know where all these people come from. There's a hell of a lot of people. Like they tried to sell me on a trip to the West Indies years ago. They told me I was seeing a lot of swinging palms when I went to Trinidad. And there they were. Millions of swinging palms. Lots of starving people. You see that all over. In India, too. All right, now, is there anything wrong with the Indians? Same thing all over. There's not a spot on earth where people are all right. Now, the only people I trust, I think you know who they are by now, are the people at Union Rescue Mission, the bums and the failures, because they don't have any vested interest. And they're not about to do anything because they can't. They have no power. Now, if you give anyone power, as you've read millions of times, power corrupts. Now, a lot of people think our government is corrupt lately. Now, the corruption was so good in Washington's time, they were able to keep it under the rug. Police stations were so corrupt in the early days, you can pay a guy off right in the police station. You pay the judge off. You used to pay cops off like that. And it was so well handled that you didn't catch the guy. Las Vegas is utterly corrupt and everybody's in it. If you pay enough people, you can survive. But if you keep in the back of your head something about clean, decent, ethical government, it doesn't exist. How many of you read about the swindles pulled by the funeral homes recently? No. No. See if you can think of an institution that's clean. You know what clean means? For human betterment. You take a guy that went into the darkest jungles, Albert Schweitzer, and he was so ignorant in some areas and good in other areas. They had grain storage in the building and medical equipment. The rats used to come in and eat a lot of that stuff. And somebody suggested they exterminate the rats. And he said, no, I don't believe in taking life. And they went around polluting and lousing up the area. Somebody must be blocking a driveway. Okay, so we mentioned that in essence then, corruption in all areas. Now some of you here may be able to think of an area that's relatively free of corruption. Try it. Can you think of any area that might be free of corruption? Other than death. Come on now, you must be able to think of something that's pretty good. Try it. Children. Innocent children. The most corrupt. Because children are corrupt, then we say, well, they're innocent. Animals, we say, are not corrupt. Nature. Some people say believe in living naturally. That means when it rains, there's a lightning storm, don't go in a house. That's not natural. Stand under the lightning. Drowning is perfectly natural. Life preserver is artificial. So when a guy is drowning, let the natural thing happen. Don't throw a life preserver. I've heard a priest say on the radio once, on the microphone in church, he was rapping the microphone, he said, do you hear me back there? Yeah. He says, there's too much materialism in the world and too many mechanical things. Do you hear me back there? Mm-hmm. And he says, we've got to live naturally. He puts on his eyeglasses, his hearing aid, and his clothing completely unnatural. There's no natural living. Natural living is when you get tuberculosis, you and drop dead. Natural living is no vaccination. And the people that eat natural foods, and the guy that smokes tobacco is smoking natural stuff, and the corn cob especially. And what do you mean by live naturally? Syphilis is natural, so is gonorrhea, perfectly natural. And so is cancer. I've seen natural cancer growing on a rabbit. Big, beautiful, natural. So we say we love nature. What the fuck are you talking about? What kind of Bambi land did you go to? What kind of good chip lollipop? Hurricanes in nature. Earthquakes, thousands, are wiped out by nature. Bubonic plague killed half the Earth's population. That's nature. Guy says, I believe in natural living. So he lies on the grass and comes up with an ass full of ticks. That's natural. Bloodsuckers are natural in the trenches. We've gone too far from nature. The caveman, when he moves a bear out of the cave and he takes that cave away from the bear, that's natural. And when a bear eats his youngest child, that's natural too. And when you're swimming and a crocodile comes over and bites your ass or your leg, or a shark, that's natural. Now what do you mean by living naturally? Nobody lives naturally. We all live in cities. When it gets cold out, we turn on the unnatural heat. And when the sun's too hot, we turn on the Venetian blinds. What's natural? Marriage is not natural. A guy squeezing on a girl's tits is not natural. That's trained. A girl walking the way she does is not natural. That's trained. A girl having long hair is trained, not natural. A girl having no hair is not natural. Nothing is no such thing as human nature. Humans don't have any nature at all. Depends on the way they're brought up. If I bring you up with a lot of butch tomboys climbing trees, say, fuck you, get out of my goddamn way, that's the way you'll talk. You believe that or you're not sure? All right, if you were brought up in a certain area of Texas, say, I get a goddamn nigga and beat the shit out of him. And that's the way you might talk, right? So what do you mean by individuality? I've never met an individual yet. There's no such thing. These are all myths. They're given to you to make you feel that you're something special. And who wants to make you feel that way? The control group. All people live under thought control. That's why, if those of you that are new here might fear that the ideas that I talk about might be dangerous, well, I'm going to tell you something now, that this organization is called Sociocyberneering, and it's least apt to succeed. We're not going to get anywhere, because the ideas are too difficult to accept. So don't worry about us becoming powerful. We're not. And to become powerful would really, for the first time, approximate the nearest thing to what you call freedom. Because we believe the smarter you are, the richer I am. The smarter your kids are, the richer society is. The better fed they are, the healthier they are, and the more loved they are, the less trouble in the world. Does that make sense to you? I mean less trouble in the world. The more miserable people are, the more suffering, the higher the probability of war. If he drives a car and he can't afford a brake job, he can kill you in a car where you can afford a brake job. So whenever there's poverty, insufficiency, mental institutions, prisons, we generate behavior. What I'm trying to tell you is all societies generate behavior. You go to a middle class or a poor Cuban family and tell them something new or how to work Venetian blinds or air conditioning, and they say, ah! They won't say the same, ah! You go to New York and you talk to New York Italian kids and say, oh, fungo, in that kind of voice too. And you go to a Negro community and say, that's right, you're right. All the same. Because if you were brought up by Negroes, that's how you talk. If they spoke like that. And if everybody talked with a, say, what's new in the world, you would talk like that. So individuality is a crock of shit where the contacts we've had with others. Every book you read, every movie you saw, every symbol you hit is a little bit of what we are. But, of course, I feel like an individual. When I go out and you show me 5 automobiles and I pick this one, I feel like I'm making a choice. I really do. Like if I lived 500 years ago and I thought of buying a nice car for you, I would buy something like this. You know, I really would. I'd make a down payment on it and I'd buy the thing. Because I have nothing else in my mind. I don't picture a jet aircraft. So what do I buy? I buy what exists. They say, well, you can go to university now and study anything you want to study. That's a crock of shit. Because in the early days, when you get back, say, 500 years ago, and you went before the king and says, I'd like to study something, he says, well, you can make flaming arrows, javelins, you can hammer out armor, you have a course in that, you know, armorsmith, you can fix chariot wheels. You couldn't study anything you wanted to study. Young American kids, when they go out into the world, in the park, you see a baseball field. or a football field. Some of you say, well, that's fine. That's shit. You don't see any chemistry labs for kids that love chemistry. You don't see an area where they can go and study aeronautics or the earth sciences. Why don't you have every goddamn park have music, art, science, theater, photography? How come it's always baseball and football? I'm going to give you the reason for it. To enhance aggressive behavior. To get men to grab a ball, take it away from somebody else, knock the other guy over. In case of a war or conflict, there's generated loyalty to team and aggression. But a society that really concerns itself with human beings never teaches aggression. When a brother has a sister and she trips and falls, he helps her up. He could shove her down the stairs and watch her fall the rest of the way. Now, there was something in a play called, I can't think of the name of it, about the death of salesman. And in that salesman, Willie, whatever his name was, what was his name? Willie Loman. He wanted to know how his uncle succeeded, how he made so much money. I mean, he was always starving. So his uncle said, one of the uncles said, come on, son, let's go out in the backyard and fight. And he's boxing with the kid, and the kid hits the uncle light. And the uncle falls on the ground, and he says, gee, I hope I didn't hurt you. He says, never stick your hand out to a man that's down. Keep him down. That's the theory of business enterprise, if you don't know that. To undersell another corporation and break their back. If you have a supermarket and you know I got $50,000 in the bank, if you sell stuff for 5 weeks or 3 months cheaper than I go out of business. So the whole theory of a shrewd businessman is to go to some Mexican plant and say, how much would you charge to turn out these pipes? And she says, 50 cents a piece. I said, make it 30 and I'll order 5,000. Make it 20 cents a piece or 15 cents a piece, then I'll order 30,000. And she has to hire people for $50 a day. So a shrewd businessman fucks the existence of other people. You admire successful people in this country. They are the meanest sons of bitches that ever lived. If you go out in South Florida and buy 50 acres for $10,000 and later sell it for $70,000, they call you a good businessman. No, all the values are twisted. But remember, it's easier to live with twisted values. It serves a self-interest. So if you're really self-interest centered, this is the philosophy. You go out into the world with your finger up everybody's ass and a smile, and your hand on their shoulder. But if you understand what I'm talking about, this system offers an alternative, and the alternatives in the system are quite different. Now, before I go on, do you have any questions you want to ask me? Maybe I've said things that you don't agree with, or you feel could be clarified, or shocking, or undesirable. Bring them up. Don't walk out here and say, I don't agree with that guy at all. Yes.
And not directly with what you just said, but with maybe in the next part of the session, if you could cover, sometimes I have trouble talking to people about, they don't understand, well, if you give people all this time and you free them in so many ways that you say that this system will free men, like what are they going to do, the motivation thing and that kind of thing.
Yeah, but if you don't have a tape recorder, I don't think you remember the answer. Well, you have to bring your tape recorder because the answers are outside of your ordinary frame of reference, otherwise you'd be able to answer those questions. Here's the answer. Many years ago they said, there are two kinds of people. The rulers, the leaders, and the followers. That's nice and simple. God made some people to rule and others to follow. Well, that makes it real convenient. So I grabbed 30,000 slaves, and they work for me. And he says, why don't you educate them? I said, they weren't meant to be educated. Look how simple they are. They sit and they argue all day in the field. You ever go to Haiti? You see them arguing all the time. They're just simple minds. You can't educate them. They've got to be born smart. So you keep them dumb. That's what Latin America's about. That's what Persia's about. That's what Italy is about. That's what France is about. There's the scupinos, the dumbbells, the people that are laborers, that are simple and ignorant. They live in the hills. This is the bullshit that they give. You can take any people out of the jungles and make them professors of mathematics if you take them as children. The myth that there are born characters that are born to do this, well, their leader will come at the right time. This is all religious shit. That there's somebody out there that's going to come at the right time and lead us out of it. Don't kid yourself. Jesus came and they let him right into shit. They crucified him. Gandhi tried to change people. They got rid of him. They got rid of a lot of people. Don't think that leaders lead anybody anywhere. The only difference is between today and the old days, In the old days, if you didn't like your neighbor, you grabbed a gun and shot him, and his wife says that was terrible, you shot her. And if his kid says, why, you killed my pa, you shoot him. You sold him up with the gun back. Today, that's outlawed. If you disagree with somebody, you can't shoot him. But every 20 years, you go out and shoot machine guns, bomb the shit out of nations. You shoot the shit out of people in mass techniques. So you're evil. So whether you would have shot 3 or 4 people next door, or wait every 20 years and blast the shit out of a nation, Korea, South Vietnam, war is the normal state. Peace is abnormal. A lot of people think, gee, they pray for peace. Peace is very rare. There's almost always war going on. And some of us get up in schools and say, well, that's human nature. There's always been war, there'll always be war. There's always that. Now the idea is, if you give people solve their basic needs, will they have incentive? Is that the question you asked? If the needs are provided, will they get good food, good housing, warmth, love, what will the incentives be? That's the question he asked. It is true, if you don't have any electrical engines or gasoline engines or sails, and you want to move a boat, the only way to move it is with slaves or your own people rowing. Now, if you don't feed them, they can't row, so you got to feed them a certain amount. If they row real well, and you give them an extra half-hour rest period, they're going to row hard all the time. That's called the incentive system. But with the advent of the steam engine, you don't care whether they can row or not. The guy says, I'm a qualified rower. We don't use them anymore. So the guy is out. Now, with technology, the typewriter, the touch typewriter, before that, you really had it way back. I seen people depress the key and practically break their knuckle. It was very hard to work a typewriter. After 3 letters in a row, your hands would ache. And most of you don't remember that. Now they got the light touch typewriter. You just pass your finger over, it goes down by itself. And you say, oh, how wonderful. But you're typing 9 times as many letters for the company. You understand what I mean? They don't pay you more. A lot of people don't know that. They don't know how they're abused. And I'm just trying to tell you something really simple. In essence, every company you work for, if you got heart disease or a brain tumor, when I own a factory, an automobile factory, there's a big machine in my plant. I asked him, the engineer, I said, what's the best oil we can use? He says, well, let me use this oil, use this weight. And she says the best electrical systems in the machine are this. Now, if the machine breaks down, I call the best specialists. I fly them out from Boeing or wherever I got those machines to keep that machine in good shape. But if you work for my company and you start getting double vision, or your elbow starts rotting away, you've got a medical bill. Why don't I take care of you? Why doesn't the company say, look, why don't you go away for a 6-week rest? Why don't we rebuild your eyes and give you eyeglasses? And why doesn't the company write that off as tax deductible? Because that's physical equipment. They pay money for their tractors. You got a truck on a big company with holes in the tire, you got to get that off right away and put a good tire. They can't afford bad tires on the Greyhound bus. When the lights don't work, they put in new lamps. They overhaul the engines. Why don't they walk around and check out the physical condition of people and give them the best medical treatment available and deduct it as operating cost? Why? Because they've conditioned you to individuality. That's your problem. But when the nation has a problem, such as they believe you're an enemy country, they say, go get them, kill them. You say, that's your fucking problem. Don't use me for that. Because if they use, during the war, they'll pump your ass full of shots, and they'll take care of your teeth and your eyes, and they'll adjust you real well. And if you wobble a little bit, they'll correct it, and they'll show you how to fire a gun and kill a bastard. But I can't kill, so don't worry about that. We'll take care of that. They'll hang a straw dummy there and stick it in, and then run it up. Right. When the straw comes out, you got it. Now twist the bayonet to make sure. The guy says, well, it's all right with a bag, but not with a man. Then they make the bag look like a Japanese fellow, or a German. And then the guy says, I still can't run it in there. And they say, the poor guy can't run it in there. And they take him in a room. And there's a movie made by Frank Capra, another horror. And it shows a Jap with crooked green teeth. And he comes into a house with his sweet people. And he grabs the little child and puts it on the bayonet. Bonsai! Flings her on the kid on the bayonet. Then he takes a girl, tears her blouse off and cuts her tits off. The guys are all nervous. You know. Then they say, all right, that's a Jap. Go. You can't hold him back. And he runs the bayonet because I could photograph you, if I wanted to, going into a room with a child and then show a child cut up. And I say, there's the one that did it. And run your picture in the Herald, all that. Fake, you know? And you couldn't get 3 blocks away from this house without being told at least. Do you know what I mean? Now, how the hell do you know what you read is so? In other words, the military have been lying to you, the government's been lying to you. What makes you think that the communists are that bad? What makes you think the Christians are that bad? Or the Mohammedans are that bad? Or the Muslims are that bad? Whenever you ask a Mohammedan what he thinks of a Christian, he lifts up his face like the fabric and spits. That's what a Christian means to him. Now, that's the way he was brought up. It makes him sick to hear the word Christian. But that isn't natural. And when you ask a Jew, what do you think of the Christian? He smiles. He says, bullshit. And you ask a Christian what he thinks of the Jews, they say, well, they're Christ killers. Well, whatever they're all full of shit. Because they're full of shit because somebody once designed a system of thought control. And that thought control was superimposed over society so they can control you with a set of values that they want you to have. Now watch this. If a person is given everything they need, would they lose their incentive? Here's the answer. If your father's a multimillionaire and he sends you to finishing school, the best universities in the country, you say, Dad, I'd like to have a car. And he buys you a brand new Mercedes. That doesn't spoil you. Then every son of a wealthy person that has everything is not worth a shit. That's not true. Every person born a wealthy person has got everything he wants and therefore he has no incentive. That's not true. Wealthy children have the same interest in botany, physics, chemistry as anyone else, even though their asshole's taken care of and they're wearing eyeglasses. Don't ever let anybody hand you that shit. Because I had a woman once stand up at one of my sessions 10 years ago and said, you want to give everybody things for nothing, and I believe they ought to work for it. And she was very wealthy, I happen to know that. So I asked her whether or not she'd be willing to spend an honest 2 minutes or 1 minute with me. She said, why, certainly. I said, did you marry into wealth? She says, yes. I said, roughly, is your old man worth over $2 million? She says, yes. I said, did you have that kind of money when you married him? She said, why, no. The car you drive, did you work for it? She says, well, no, my husband bought it for me. And what about the house you live in with the 9 rooms, air conditioning, swimming pool, tennis court? Well, my old man bought it for me. Aren't you getting all that shit for nothing? And you're out there saying those goddamn people are out on strike, they don't want to work for a living? Why, most women I know that married into wealth don't move their ass. They say, honey, I'm expecting company tonight. Whip up a nice apple pie and cook and set the table. And they go out to the country club. Do you know what I mean? And all the other asses are working. They don't understand that if that spoiled women, I don't know if that spoils them. If I gave you a guaranteed income of $50,000 a week, I don't know if it's going to spoil you. You might go to the Salvation Army and help them out. You might send your kid brother through school and help your grandfather get a new set of false teeth. I don't know what you do, but I don't think it's going to spoil you. Now, the kind of people it'll spoil are people with brain damage. They can only become more atrocious, but they're already in power. They're in government. They have nothing to worry about. How money's going to spoil people? Everybody says if you give everybody everything they want, it'll spoil them. And then they're all trying to get everything they can get home. Have you noticed that? Everybody wants to get spoiled. They want to get as much money as they can in the shortest period of time. So think of what spoiled means. The rich men say, why, if you gave everybody everything they wanted, it would spoil them. This guy with this tremendous gut and holdings. He says, you don't want to give everybody everything, do you? Bankers go like that. Why, if you gave them all that, it'd spoil them. This guy's got all that. It's like the story about the communists. Remember? He says, if you had 2 Rolls Royces, would you give me one? And he says, yes. He says, if you had 9 castles, would you give them away to the poor? Yes. If you had 2 shirts, would you give me one? He says, no. Why not? Because I've got 2 shirts. So the whole story, the antagonism against the communists and the antagonism against the free enterprise system, these were the jokes told. Is Castro good or bad? Castro is not smart enough to be good, and your president, Ford, is too dumb to be good, and your vice president is an asshole, and they're all the same. There's just no difference. A Russian mother doesn't spit on its children. She picks them up and plays with them, just as you. If they didn't speak in an accent, you know, they have the same feelings you have. When a communist screws a girl, he has the same kind of orgasm. He doesn't have a communist orgasm. When a mother kisses her child, she doesn't have a communist kiss. They don't have communist piles, or Jewish piles, or Polish piles. There's only one kind of pile. They hurt. And when you get sand in your eye, whether you're Greek or a Jew or a rabbit, it hurts. And the idea is to get rid of these myths of all these different kinds of people. You think they're real. They talk about races as though they were the Jewish race. Let me tell you what a Jew is. A Jew is a group of people that once believed in magic, certain types of magic, and a guy came with a long white beard and sold them another brand of magic. And they bought it. And they followed Moses, or they followed Yahweh, they followed some philosophy, or Abraham, and they took on that point of view. Now another guy came up and made a speech, and some of these Jews followed him. And they were called Christians, just because they followed him. Now if I raise my children to be scientific mechanists, they say, well, I don't want your child playing with my little mechanists. See? As though they're different. All human beings start in the same pot. Somebody makes a speech. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. So they follow him. Muhammad. See, they're Muhammad, and they're full of shit, too. They all come from the same stock. They think they're different. He faces the east, you face the north, I face the instrument panel. We face different things. If you want information, you work at it. Now, all of us have been brought up with romantic horseshit, and we seek magic. We knock wood. There's hardly any wood around here. We knock wood. It's mostly stainless steel. Terrible. But anyway, when something bad happens, we look for wood to knock on. Now, you don't think knocking wood is going to change the mind of God, do you? Or the devil, for that matter. You don't think wearing a little garlic around your neck is going to keep evil spirits away. If God wanted your asshole to burst into flames, you're not going to get down on your knees and say, don't cause my asshole to burst into flames. He doesn't give a shit about your persuasive techniques. In other words, people, look at this. When you ask God to take care of your brother-in-law that's sick, you're assuming that he doesn't know your brother-in-law is sick and he doesn't need help. If he's as smart as you make him out to be, I don't think you ever have to pray for anything. All you have to do is look up and wink. But you don't need to say, my children are out at sea and they haven't come home and nobody found them yet. So you get down on your knees, and he's so busy making new universes that he stops. He said, what was that? The children lost them. Where? In the Gulf Stream. And then he blows. And the wind blows him over, and then he whispers in the ear of the navigator on a search ship, and the ship goes out and finds it. God says, so that was very well. No, don't make an idiot out of God. A jerk, when you get down on your knees, you change his mind. Because all the farmers pray for rain, and all the Boy Scouts pray for dry weather, so they go out on a picnic. And God listens to both of them, so you get lightning, storms, cholera, rattlesnakes, everything. In other words, the whole shed is no good. There are floods, earthquakes, and if you look at the wonders of nature, you must look at the shit of nature, too. And some of the idiots in the church think that the reason a man suffers is to make him wise. Deep wisdom comes through pain and suffering. So all you have to do is design a wheel that you turn with splinters generated and make everybody suffer. Make the president wiser, too, and everybody else. The idea is that suffering occurs because of ignorance. And religion, no matter what religion, as long as it doesn't deal with problem solving, there will be war and hatred and jealousy and envy in the church and amongst religious people. And like I said yesterday, God doesn't hang a pecker on a guy and say, don't use it until you're married. And he doesn't make a vagina lubricate and say, don't lubricate until you're married. God, if he's intelligent, he makes a pecker pop out when you get married. Bingo. The guy now has a penis. In other words, the whole design of nature is insane. It's an insane conglomeration of disease. Every organ in the human body is harassed by different types of antagonistic organisms. So don't think that giving people things change them. If you know anybody who's got a lot of money, say that it spoil you. The fact that you can buy a yacht, go skiing, fly to France, does that spoil you? He said, why no? What makes you think? I think it'll spoil you because you haven't got anything. I've got a lot. And I don't think it'll do you any good at all. So the guy that's sitting up there telling you how much it'll spoil people is usually a guy that's got everything. The king says, I'm king because I was meant to be king. Until somebody throws him out and burns him. And she says he was meant to be thrown out and burned. My brother was meant to be the new king. And everybody says, amen. And then they burn your brother and say he was meant to be burned too. So they change the books. The Bible's been changed so goddamn many times. Every year there's over 600 new religions in America alone. And next year is going to be more. And they throw away a lot of religions. And so people turn to religion because understanding the real world is difficult. That's why they turn to religion. That's why they turn to magic. When you tell me, Fresco, when you get a crop failure, don't irrigate and study the corn. Face the east. Lie on the ground. Throw yourself humble before the heavenly forces. And then you'll get a good crop. You'll have a good crop. There's just no basis for it. If you don't irrigate, put minerals in the soil, you don't get a good crop. It never works unless floodwaters bring minerals in the area. Now, you don't get healthy beef unless the animals eat well. And you don't get a healthy child unless it's well-fed and kept free of noise and pain and lack of love. If you give them all those things, you don't have any bad products. If you turn out airplanes with high-quality control and inspection, you don't have too many accidents. And to the degree that you negate those things, you do. Now, here's where magic comes in. When the doctor says we've done all we can do, and the rest he uses is in God's hands. What he means is, some doctors, that I've done everything I do physically. And what else occurs is within the natural healing characteristics of that individual and the rest of the factors. So we get down on our knees and we say, we do this, all of us do this, including atheists. They're not praying. In other words, if my son were lost in the forest or my little daughter, I would be looking for her, and as I had difficulty finding her, as the night came on and the cold, I would do this because I'm insecure. I'm looking and I increase the pressure intensely. And as I look, I hope more. I hope I go around the next bend, I'll find her. And I must increase my hope, otherwise I give up. So hope is metaphysical. Search is real. As you search this area, and don't use any energy to squeeze your palms because you may have to climb some trees and need that. So climb the highest tree, look for your little girl, then go down into the deep gulch, and if you don't find her, say, shit, where can she be? Don't burn yourself out. Keep looking. So people that are emotional are cold. You've got to think about what I'm saying now. In the movies, they tell you that a warm person says, my God, is that what happened to your brother? How horrible. You feel, oh, what a wonderful human being. A wonderful human being says, what happened to your brother? Take me to him, and they go to work on him. They don't emote. Emotion is superfluous behavior, superfluous to the task. And yet all your movies and all your plays, and especially the old movies of the old world, they got a bleeding heart and people are weeping and pulling their hair. When you care, you work on the problem. You go to these hungry nations and you rebuild their agriculture. And you build new plow systems and food handling systems and protein processing systems. You use all your energy. And if you read about more people starving in a given area, instead of walking up and back depressed, this is the shit. This is cold to me. So what they write in the artistic literature, that cold science, have you noticed that? And the arts and the humanities are warm. They are cold. It's science that's warm, because science sees people suffering and they go to work on it. They try to eliminate disease to whatever extent they can. And they try to grow twice as much per acre. And they try to increase the yield. While the religionists get down on their knees and say, increase the acreage. Get up off your ass and make that soil grow things. Do research. Try to teach people how to read and how to enrich their lives and how to develop more fully and how to understand cultures that differ from your own. This is religion to me. Not sitting on your ass saying, hey, God, make it rain. Then it rains. Say, hey, thanks. What the hell do you do? Hey, God, my brother-in-law's got piles. He goes like that. And then, what the hell do you do? If you turn around, in other words, if God, like I said in other sessions, said, let there be light, and there was light, I don't admire the guy. But when Helmholtz said, I'd like to try to generate light, and he worked on it, and he made electrical generators, and there was light, he made this light. God didn't do a fucking thing. He said, let there be light, and there was light. Let there be a planet Earth, and there was an Earth. What the hell is that? You, to get your clothes clean, you got to work on it. He doesn't. So the God that they created is an asshole. Doesn't exist. It's a myth. They give you something to direct your attention to when you're in trouble. Oh, God, instead of get mad at the king. In the early days, people used to, when things didn't work out too well, they grabbed the king and they burned him. So the king invented the priest. And the priest said there are two people, God and Satan. Satan burns your ass, causes disease, famine, trouble. So when you get mad, spit on Satan. And when things go well, thank the king and God. So when things went bad, they used to burn effigies of Satan, spit on it, shit on it, throw it off a precipice. And so their hatred was not directed against people. And if you got the devil working for you, said the devil makes everything that's bad, so don't choke the guy next door, spit on the devil. They were trying to control the behavior of ignoramuses. That's where magic came in. But they couldn't. Because they came amongst people, the high priest, and they said, I have come from the one on high. And they say, do something strange. So the guy took a roll of toilet paper and held it in his hand, and the thing went up in the air like that. And they said, ah, and they fell to the ground. They went through these little magical demonstrations. And every religion has a history of magic, where somebody cracked a rock by looking at it. And what they used to do in the very early days, I've seen this one, it was only good, they take a little dead bird, you see, and they hold it in their hand, and they use two thin wires, like surgical thread on the ceiling, and they concentrate it, and they move their hand a little away from the dead bird. You know how that looks to the audience? The bird looks like it's going up in the air, levitating. And there's lots of levitation done with strings. And so they used a few great tricks, and they got a big following. But they never taught the priests, the young kids that followed them around with the holy water, they never told them how it worked, because then it would break down. And they died. And the kids that are priests today and rabbis and ministers are all results of fakery in the past. Because, I can prove it to you, the stories are so simple and so mixed up and so senseless. Now here it is again. Don't ever believe the myth that if you give people the things they want, they don't turn out too well. Try to think of who makes that myth. Does it come from the poor? If it does, they succeeded in convincing the ignorant that they don't deserve anything more than what they've got. And I've heard people that were dying in a hospital, in misery and pain, saying, I know I've been a sinner in the past, and I know I've lived an evil life, but dear God, ease my suffering. I cannot say that I've not been an evil man. And what a job they did. They did such a good job in some countries that when they got an infected knee, they looked up and they said, that's my karma. I'm paying for evils I did in a former life, rather than understand that the area is not clear of infection. Because when you work in a hospital, or you're a victim in a hospital, and the nurse contaminates you, and you tell the doctor, I've been contaminated because the hospital doesn't carry on its cleanliness, and it doesn't maintain cleanliness standards throughout the area. Sanitation is poor. You can sue the hospital. But if the doctor came in and said, that's your karma, you don't give me that shit. If you're an engineer and you design a bridge, and it falls into the sea with hundreds of cars on it, and she says, that is the karma of those people. You say, fuck you. That's the engineer that designed the bridge. Don't let that karma shit go. Because the minute you go to a mystic and promise to bring something divine to their temple, and you bring some gold to their temple, turn around with it, carry it the other way, and give it to a research lab. He says, how is it that you have not provided for our temple? And you say, karma. They don't like that shit at all. They don't say, perhaps so. They get mad. Like I said before, when a flat iron falls on a mystic's foot, he doesn't say, that's my karma. You know what I mean? It's a pain in the ass. So don't let them push that shit on you. There are no wise men that live in India. India is a source of the greatest ignorance and poverty and disease and stupidity and monuments to shit. The Taj Mahal is ugly because the guy built it to his wife. If he was smart, he'd have built a library in India. A beautiful library with books to enhance the lives of people, not a fucking monument to his wife. Do you understand what I'm talking about? The pyramids are not built to cover the remains of some asshole. They would have used that energy to build a dam, prevent floods of the Nile, and hold back those waters and irrigate the valleys and grow more food for people. And they've never done that. So you're brought in your school books, we marvel at the works of the Egyptians. They were stupid, selfish-centered, and built monuments, no doubt, to nothing in particular. And their people live like shit, the majority. So there's no beauty in the pyramids when you think of the history of it. Now you think of the Aztecs. They were wise people. They were far ahead of their time. They may have come from the lost continent of Mu. The Aztecs were assholes. They used to take the people they didn't like, bring them up to the top of the pyramid, and sacrifice them to the gods, shove them down the pyramid. And when they captured somebody that they didn't like, They would rip their asshole open, tie the intestines to a heavy stone, and throw it off and disembowel the guy completely. And when you read of the things their civilization did, although they worshiped the sun, which is I do that automatically. I love that. I've always loved the sun. So what? I mean, when you think, don't look at their temples and be deluded by that. Don't look at the king's throne and hat and all the gold around there. This is the superficial thing. Look at the person. When you meet a guy, listen to his mind, his set. Don't look at the cost of the suit. Don't look at the price of a gown a girl wears. This is the horseshit. This is painting shit with a pearl-like color. You know what I mean? We're making pearls out of shit and painting them. And she says, oh, how lovely. See, the idea is to teach people what shit is. And shit is the ornament. Shit is the capital, the dome in Washington. And I suggest the next time you people go to Washington, go into that dome upstairs. And inside, the last time I was there, it says, fuck you. There's toilet paper all over and shit all around. This is inside your dome in Washington, D.C. It's white on the outside and shitty on the inside. There's more fuck you and nasty words written in the dome. But I've never read that anywhere. I've been in the dome, and I was shocked. I really get shocked. There was so much shit around. The next time you go to Washington, go inside the dome with your camera. You want to make a long joke. But what I'm trying to say is stop looking at the outside of things. Try to probe deeper into things. Now, if you like the idea of the brotherhood of man, if you like the idea of God, which is a beautiful idea, don't separate people. Bring them all together. Bring them all together on one world, and let's try to live as richly and fully and cooperatively as we know how. And let's not try to attain perfection. Let's just try to make life better than it is for man. And let's continuously strive to better the relationship with people. This is what this organization is about. This is what we teach. Now, we can't do it the old way. We can't do it with the old values of beating the other fellow. And, hey, isn't my kid prettier than your kid? She got an A and you got a C. See, you can't do it that way. You only cut people up. You cut them up and you hurt them. Now you're going to have to think about these things. If you have any questions, fire away. Now we're open. Any questions? Did I answer your question or sent it? Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were talking about what is natural.
What?
When you were talking previously about what is natural,
Yes.
one of the things that are natural, would you, of course, you assume that the process of evolution would be natural?
Yeah, I'll go along with that.
Germs becoming organisms.
Yeah, sure, that's natural too.
By the same token, accelerated to a higher plane. Civilizations would be going through, possibly right now, the process of evolution, which is striving for what evolution usually produces, which is perfection.
Well, I don't know that. I'll let you know in about 5 years if we're still around. We may wipe each other out with a nuclear war.
Yeah, well,
Is that possible?
of course it's possible.
If it is, then, was man moving toward his demise or perfection? He could move either way. That's why we exist. We exist here, and our main goal is to avoid this possible catastrophe, and it is possible for man to achieve fantastic things as long as he gets out of the good ship lollipop and away from the myths and faces what you call reality.
Well, I'm trying to look
Yes.
into